Hello and welcome to The Rewriters, a celebration of people who have shirked convention, expectation, and even their own limitation to rewrite their story on their terms. Each episode will dig into the inspired and very real-life stories of people who have done just that, rewritten their story. I'm a nosy practical optimist too, so expect all of the nitty-gritty details. If you're an ambitious seeker craving a different kind of lifestyle, career or business, but have felt held back by your own or other people's beliefs about what's possible or permissible, The Rewriters is for you. Hello Rewriters and welcome to the very first episode of 2022. I'm your host and resident rewriter, Monique Shaw. I was so ready to see the back end of 2021 and I'm really excited for this year. I always see the year out with reflections on what I've learned and what I've achieved and what I want more of and less of in the coming year. And in 2022, I'm hoping for more travel and adventure and less worry about the things I can't control. Now, for the first episode of 2022, I ummed and ahed about whether I should start the year with a solo episode about the different ways you could rewrite your career story in the year ahead. But actually, I did an episode about this for 2021 in December 2020, and I re-listened to that one last week, and it is still really relevant and applicable for 2022. So if you've got time after listening to this episode, grab your notebook and go and listen to episode 3 of the Rewriters podcast, How to Rewrite Your Career Story in 2021. We'll explore where you are right now, your audit, what you stand for, your brand, and what you want, your rewrite. So I will link to that in the show notes. And if you would like to work with me directly to rewrite your career story in 2022, doors are still open for the first group of the year for my Rewrite Your Career Story group coaching program. We have our first session coming up on Monday, the 17th of January, so time is running out to secure your place and be a part of this group. If you are a frustrated, bored, overwhelmed professional for whom work isn't working for you anymore and you're in need of some clarity and a way forward, this program was designed with you in mind. Details on what you can expect and how to enroll are in the show notes, along with loads of other stuff. And you can also DM me directly on Instagram at The Rewriters. That's at @the_rewriters. Now, let me introduce you to today's guest. In this episode, I speak with small business PR expert and founder of the PR set, Pippa Goulden. Pippa is passionate about giving small business owners the knowledge and confidence they need to get their business visible and to help them to grow through PR. What sets Pippa apart is the way that she widens access to PR and demystifies an otherwise expensive, intimidating, and inaccessible industry. Pippa rewrote her own career story, leaving PR agency life and work as a magazine editor to create a business that makes PR accessible and doable for businesses who may have felt like it was out of reach for them. She loves PR and she loves helping people and she loves connecting people. And now she does all of those things in a way that works for her and the way she wants to live. During our conversation, we discuss how we get PR wrong, the importance of mindset, getting over our fear of rejection, and Pippa's guiding principles for self-promotion. Pippa also shares the old stories she had to let go of to create her business and the work life that she has now. I'll include links to ways you can contact and work with Pippa in the show notes. And what I think is really important about this conversation is how misunderstood self-promotion is and how relevant PR is for people in employment too. It's not just for business owners. Whether you're working in employment, running your own business, or both, listen to this episode with the lens of how could I apply these tools to shape the career I want and to get the opportunities that I want. And be audacious too. If you know of someone who should shout about their work a little more boldly and unapologetically, send them this episode. And if you enjoy it, don't forget, as always, to give the Rewriters 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and share it wherever you get your podcasts. Now, on with my conversation with Pippa. Hi, Pippa. Welcome to the Rewriters.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So before we begin, I would love you to share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. I'm Pippa and I am the founder of the PR set, which I started just over a year ago in the middle of a global pandemic, as you do. And I basically offer a flexible approach to PR for small businesses.
Fantastic. Right. So the thing that I'm really excited to be talking about with you is rewriting old stories and also getting to a point where we can brag about and comfortably tell our new stories as well. So you run the PR set now. What were you doing before and what led you to start your own business in a pandemic?
So I have over 15, 16, I've stopped counting to be honest, years experience working in PR, mainly in big agencies, working with big brands, big budgets, kind of household names, doing lots of very exciting, shiny PR things, but, working really strategically with brands to kind of get them in front of their target audience, and loved it, had a brilliant career and did some really interesting work. But I had 2 children and agency lifestyle. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with the same story. It wasn't hugely compatible with having young children. And I also felt a bit of an itch to do something else and work with slightly different types of businesses. I also edited a publication actually called Parent Folk, which I launched the Southeast version of. We moved out of London. I didn't want to be going into London all the time, not that anyone is now, but this is in the context of before. And I wanted to be changing what I was doing a bit. So I launched the Southeast edition of Parent Folk, which is an awesome, amazing, brilliant brand publication, and did that for 18 months. And actually what it did was give me a huge insight into how wrong lots of people get PR, including PRs, which was quite scary. The seeds were sown then. In between that and the kind of the big agency stuff, I also work with my best friend at her brilliant boutique agency, Luxley Communications. And that gave me a real insight and showed me that actually my passion is working with small businesses. So fast forward to now, and here is the PR set.
So you said there that a lot of people, and including PRs, get PR wrong. And PR, the media generally, I think the world of media is quite intimidating and kind of a bit of a black box and unknown if you're on the outside of it, which a lot of us are. What do people get wrong about PR? What do people misunderstand about that industry and how to do it the right way?
In my experience, the PR industry hasn't done a great job of actually PRing itself. I think a lot of people think that PR is a bit of a dark art. And so what I really wanted to do with the PR set was to show small businesses that they could do it themselves. I think there's a real misconception that you need to have lots of money, you need to have big budgets, you need to have all the contacts, you need to have those little black books to actually be able to do PR. And it's just not true. I mean, I've got a DIY PR membership and my members are proving it. Every week they're getting coverage in amazing publications like The Times and Stylist and Grazia. It's really about just understanding how to do it. And so that's what I'm really passionate about, is teaching small businesses how to do it and get out there. And I think the other thing is that a lot of people think PR is just about media, and actually it's not. It's about getting your business talked about and seen by a target audience. And there can be lots of ways to do that. It doesn't have to just be media. It could be getting on a podcast. It could be, speaking at an event, building your profile as a kind of expert in what you do. So really what I try to help small businesses to do is to look for those opportunities and see how they can kind of build their own profile as well as that of their business and get their business visible in front of that target audience.
So it's, in terms of myth busting, it doesn't require massive budgets. It doesn't require necessarily external experts, and it isn't just traditional media.
Exactly. Tick. Well done. Gold star for you. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to do. And a lot of the emails I would get from PRs, and not all that, I'm not anti-agency at all. It's definitely the right thing for some businesses. I've worked in some amazing agencies out there doing brilliant work, but I would get emails from PRs where it's not thought out. It's not, they don't know who they're emailing, they're sending blanket email lists, that kind of thing. And that's the stuff that I really recommend not doing. So yeah, there's lots of things that I teach, but kind of taking a personal bespoke approach to kind of each email that you're sending, building relationships. You can use social media to go out and build relationships. There are lots of ways that you can do PR for your own business.
This dovetails really nicely with a lot of the work that I do around personal brand. So helping people to understand and creating personal brands that, because we all have personal brands at work, creating personal brands that align to how we want to work and who we want to make the most impact on. That is relevant in the world of work, whether or not you're in employment or you're working for yourself. Do you come across many people taking a PR approach or using PR to develop their careers when they're not working for themselves, when they have a sort of profile within an organization?
Yeah, it's something that I really encourage people to do. And I think as women, I know your audience isn't just women, but I do think as women, we can be the ones that don't want to push ourselves out there, and we hide behind things. And I've done this myself, so I'm talking from personal experience as well. Building your profile as an expert in whether you're a business owner or you have a career is a really good thing to do, because it gets you noticed, and it's that human connection that is so important in everything that we do. I think splitting things by your business life or your home life, I don't think it works like that anymore. I think people want to know, I'm not saying you have to go out there and tell everyone everything that's ever happened to you in your life. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about looking for ways to raise your profile, to get noticed, to build those relationships, build your network. That can be so important. And that's one of the things that I often say to people, is to start looking at your network and how you can work with people within your network, because those are sometimes the easiest questions to ask. Hey, how about we collaborate on this? Or how about we do a webinar together on XYZ? Start with your network and build out from there can be a really good place to begin if you're feeling a bit intimidated by it.
So you mentioned that a lot of often women, and I would agree with that, can feel a little bit hesitant to self-promote, and self-promotion is kind of a dirty term. It's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. I was pretty bold when I was in employment, and if anybody was listening to this who used to work with me, they would be furiously nodding. I was not shy of telling people what I was up to, and I really, really loved building relationships and sharing what I was doing. I did struggle to pivot that, although it may not have looked like that so on the outside looking in. I struggled with that when I started working for myself, because suddenly I was the brand and I wasn't hiding behind a reputable and established brand that I was a part of. It was me, and it felt a little bit uncomfortable. And I know that you've spoken a little bit about off air about mindset and the importance of mindset. And I know mindset is one of those terms that is used a lot and maybe misused or overused. But how have you seen mindset come up with your clients? And also, this is a bit of a double-headed question, so I hope it's not too convoluted. How have you found mindset come up for your clients? And also, what work did you have to do on your mindset when it came to moving from employment to start your own business?
It's everything for both in answer. And yeah, you're right, like mindset, what are people talking about? But I would say 80% of the things that get in people's way from putting themselves out there in terms of promoting their business, making the connections, asking the questions, is down to mindset, down to them not feeling like they want to push themselves forward, or they feel like, why would anyone want to hear from me? I'm just little old me doing my small business, or no one wants to hear my story. And we get in our own way so much. I'm talking about from personal experience. It's quite amazing. I see people join the PR set and they come in, and quite often they are feeling very unconfident about their business. They're not sure which way to go. They kind of have the hunched shoulders, and they're a bit apologetic for being there. And within a few months, it's like watching them grow. It's watching the peacocks come out and the feathers coming out, and you see the confidence growing because people are responding well to their business and their idea that they've had. You see them grow in confidence, and it's those ones that are just actually going for it and are putting themselves out there and asking the questions and pitching themselves for things. And it's them who are getting the brilliant results, because they're actually just going, sod it, I'm just going, if I get a no, what's the worst thing that can happen?
One of the things that comes up for me with my clients is this idea of confidence. And when I'm more confident, then I'll be able to do this. And if I had more confidence, I'd be able to do that. But the courage is the bit that has to happen first, the kind of audacity to just have a go. Even if you're not feeling confident and you're feeling a bit terrified about it, diving in anyway, you finding with your clients that they are feeling the fear in doing it anyway, so to speak. And then as a result of some of the results they're getting, their mindset is starting to shift. Or are they doing the work on their mindset first and then being able to throw their hat in the ring? Or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do think I'm just going to give it a go and see what happens. I think it's being not scared of rejection anymore. I think that can be something that really holds us back. But what if they don't want me? What if they hate my idea? When you actually stop caring so much about the reaction that you're going to get from people, and actually, if you really believe in what you're doing, people are drawn to that energy. I'm a real big believer in energy. And I saw this a lot when I was sitting in the editor's chair. The emails that would come through from a small business owner who would be saying, oh, and this is the same if you've got a career as well. If you're pitching yourself for an opinion piece in a magazine, oh, I'm sorry to take up space in your inbox, I'm apologizing for being here, versus somebody who would send me an email saying, look at what I've achieved, look at this great story that I've got, look at this great stuff that I'm doing for people, look at who we're serving with our business. That's what I would be interested in. And that energy comes through in how you write emails about yourself, how you do LinkedIn posts, how you do conversations with people that you meet at an event, all that kind of thing. It's really that energy shift that I think makes a difference for people. And I don't think you necessarily have to believe it yet. I think you can pull on your big girl pants and go out and just have a go. And lean into that. It's definitely a shift in momentum, and it's that drive.
The point that you made there, that you don't have to necessarily believe it entirely, I think is a really salient one, because getting rid of the fear of rejection is almost impossible. Like, you can't eradicate that entirely. Some people can, I'm sure. I've never been able to entirely do it, because we're wired to want the group's approval.
Validation.
That's how we are. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not so much removing the fear of rejection as much as it is acknowledging that there's some fear and acknowledging that it's uncomfortable, but not letting that get in the way, and allowing yourself to take the action anyway.
And something that I say to people is, like, literally, think about what is the worst thing that would happen about you sending that email. I mean, they say no. Ones if they say no. I mean, that's great, because at least you know and you can move on. Really good example of this. One of my lovely members joined the PR set, and she said she'd had on her vision board, she wanted to be in a certain magazine for her business, and she wanted to get on a certain podcast. And within 2 weeks of joining the PR set, she'd made both of those things happen. And she said, I've been sitting there with them on my to-do list and on my vision board for 6 months, but it was only that impetus from me going, go on, just get in touch with them. And obviously, there are a few skills that you can learn along the way about honing your pitch and pulling out your story and finding what's relevant. But quite often it's just the doing it that is what makes the difference.
It's crazy, because the same thing happens when I speak to people about applying for jobs, or for you pitching to be featured in a particular piece of press, or to be a guest on a particular podcast. You can guarantee you're not going to get the job or go on the podcast or be featured in the magazine if you do nothing.
Yeah.
And so if the worst that's going to happen is they say no, you're back where you were when you started.
Exactly.
But you've done something to move the dial a little bit, and you've made the next job application or the next pitch a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
And another thing on that point is not making decisions for other people. And I've mentioned this before in an earlier episode about imposter syndrome. It's not our job to make decisions for other people as to whether or not it's a good idea for them or they should consider us. It's up to them. But the only way that you give them an opportunity to think about whether or not they're going to feature you is to give them an opportunity to think about whether or not they're going to feature you.
That is such a good point, because I think we're our own worst enemy, aren't we? We make up these things in our heads that aren't actually true. So why they don't want to hear from me? Well, actually, journalists do want to hear from you. If you've got a great story, you've got a great business, they're looking for content that's relevant for their audience. It's not your job to decide that your business is too small, or your career isn't relevant, or whatever that story is you're telling yourself. A lot of the people that I work with suffer from the same thing. It's this voices in our heads, and I've done a lot of work as well, listening to those voices in my head and working out what stories they're telling me that aren't true, and just trying to figure out how to bat those stories away, because they are the things that they're the things that have held me back. And I see time and time again that they're the things that hold small business owners and people from in all sorts of professions back. We need to get out of our heads more.
Rewriting old stories is one of my favorite things to do, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So when we spoke offline, you shared a couple of old stories that you had to rewrite in order to launch the PR set and to leave your old world of employment to become an entrepreneur. And one of them was, I'm not an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Do you see my face? Obviously, you can't hear my face, but my face, even when saying that word, makes me go, oh, I feel like I'm totally not an entrepreneur. I don't know where this came from. Definitely, I've had it, through my career. Like, people like me don't own their own businesses, even though my mum and my dad had their own businesses. So, I'm not sure where that came from. I think also, I really wanted to be able to do something flexibly that worked around my kids. And that was something that was really important to me. And it's something that I had growing up with my mum, and I couldn't see how that would work. So therefore I told myself it wouldn't work. So therefore I wouldn't do it. I also had this thing in my head that I realized I was really good at kind of being a number two. I don't know, again, where this came from. And I worked with my best friend, like I said, to help her build her agency. And I remember saying to someone, I'm just really good at being number two. I don't want the responsibility of having my own business. And it was all stuff that I was telling myself to kind of justify why I didn't need to go up and do the stuff that I actually secretly wanted to do.
So what are some of the things that you thought entrepreneurs and number ones were before you did it?
I think it was really like, growing up, you'd see kind of certain Richard Branson type figures. For an entrepreneur was somebody who worked every hour God sent and made millions, and had an island in the Caribbean and had private jets. And I didn't really understand actually that being an entrepreneur is just somebody who's running their own business and creating a life for themselves that they want. I've re-educated myself a lot on the fact that you can create a life for yourself in the way that you want to have it without sacrificing certain things. And I think for me, an entrepreneur, I would always see as sacrificing something to get the end goal, which was money. And again, I think for me, it's as much about values and about running a business that works for me, aligned with who I am and who I want to work with. Obviously, the financial side of things is important. I want to make money from it, but without sacrificing those other things. And I think what I've really realized over the last few years is that you can do both. Like, you can run a business based on your own principles and work with the type of people that you want to work with without sacrificing it. And I'm not going to say I don't get it right all the time. There's definitely, times when, there is longer hours or less money, or I might say, oh well, actually maybe I should work with this brand because of XYZ. So it's not like I've nailed it, but I've definitely learned along the way that you don't have to compromise on certain things to achieve other things.
So redefining what entrepreneur means, and also redefining what PR means and to run a PR agency means, rather than trying to shoehorn yourself into an old definition that doesn't feel like you. Because actually what you described there, the Richard Branson archetype of entrepreneur, isn't you, but the Pippa archetype that you've created is. So often we kind of box ourselves into these old, outdated ideas about what things are and what industries are and what things must look like, and exclude ourselves from them rather than smashing the mold and doing it our way.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I knew that I didn't want to run a traditional PR agency, and I think mainly because my experience of that was, again, long hours, big teams, the budget side of things, like constantly be looking for lots of income come in and maintaining those client relationships and stuff. I couldn't see, from the background where I came from, I couldn't see how that could work with the kind of the family stuff that I wanted to mix. And don't get me wrong, there are actually people out there who are doing that model and doing it. It was just not really what I'd experienced. And it was the pandemic that, for me personally, obviously we've all been through a horrible, weird time, but it was that pause the enforced pause. I'm a real doer, and it was the enforced pause that actually gave me that time to sit down. I can remember the moment so vividly. My kids were playing outside because there wasn't a lot of homeschooling going on. When I say playing, they were probably like, fighting. And I was sitting down watching them, and I just got a beauty pie order. If you do a beauty pie, it's like a subscription beauty brand. So you subscribe on a monthly fee, and you get discounted beauty products. And as I was sitting there with my box that had just arrived as my treat to myself in the pandemic, I was like, this is how I can do it. There is a different way. Like, you don't have to do the formula that you've been prescribed. So everything I'd learned, I was kind of unpeeling as I opened up this box of beauty pie products. And I was thinking, there is a different way. There are people out there doing PR differently. I'm not saying that I've kind of totally torn up the whole industry, and there were people doing it brilliantly, but it was that moment for me where it was like my epiphany of just like, oh my God, I can do this differently. Working with Katie and the work that I'd done with small businesses, I knew that that's what set me alight, and I was really passionate about. I basically worked out who I love working with. How can that become a financial model?
So you'd already identify, like you already had your skills, like you're a PR. That was and had been an editor of a magazine, so you could see both sides. You had your skills there and the bits that you enjoyed. You had your lifestyle or life red line around, I want to be around for my kids, and this element is important as well. You spoke about your values too, and the who you wanted to work with or who you wanted to help. All of those pieces came together. What was it about unboxing your beauty products that made you go, that brought that all together?
I think it was just realizing that there was, the founder of Beauty Pie had changed. She created a different model that wasn't the same formula of create a product, do lots of expensive marketing around it and put it on a shelf for 10 times the price that we paid for. She'd changed the model and shown that you don't have to do stuff in a formulaic way to basically give people a kind of the same experience, but on in a different way.
And it was still, because Beauty Pie isn't packed with cheap products, it's packed with good quality products at an affordable price point if you're doing the subscription. So she's making something accessible that may not otherwise be accessible or may feel like luxury or a little bit out of reach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that out of reach thing, isn't it? The people that I work with usually think that PR isn't accessible to them. So I'm trying to make PR accessible for people who think it's not, they can't do it.
So how did you get from, I can't do it, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm a number two, to finding, and I know it's an ongoing process because I've worked for myself as well, and it's constantly turning knobs and a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit more of this, let go of that, add this bit in. But how did you start to bring it all together? Was it iterative? Was it overnight after seeing the beauty pie box?
Yeah, I guess a bit before that as well, there was a massive piece of work I did on my mindset as well. So I knew that I had these self-limiting beliefs. And actually one of my best friends from school is called Caroline Britton, and she's got a coaching business called Caroline Britton Coaching. And my mum had bought me a session with her, like one of her first ever clients. It was really weird, actually. I found an email that my mum had written me today in 2014, and I was obviously going through a whole, like, I don't know what I want to do with my life kind of thing. And she'd listed out all the kind of pros and cons about me doing my own thing. And, a lot of those things that we were talking about, the value about being around, from like being able to go to my kids' nativity plays and all that kind of stuff. It was really weird seeing that again today, because I hadn't seen it for however many years, but it was all those things that I'd obviously been trying to work out a way to do it, and I just couldn't make it work with the kind of model that I thought I had to follow. And anyway, so Mum had bought me this session with Caroline, and I'd put it to one side and said, Caroline, I don't need it, I don't want it, I've been really resistant to it. Did parent vote, and then I remember I said to Caroline, right, come on, she was staying. I was like, let's do the session. Let's just do it. And by this time, her prices all gone up. It was a massive value for what I got. And I remember her saying to me, she kind of had her hands kind of separate. And she said, right, this is what you've done before. This is what you're doing now. And I can see it all coming together in a way that you haven't quite figured out yet. And I was like, oh, whatever, And then literally a year later, I was like, I've just worked out what that point is. Those two things of my experience that actually I can put together to create something. But again, it was a lot of it around the mindset, around those, I can't do this, I can't make it work financially. I've learned I've got a real scarcity mindset when it comes to money. And I've done a lot of work on that as well in the last year. And that's my thing. I think that's what, as a kind of business owner, I have to keep working on. And I know that that's my thing. Like whenever I get worried about stuff, it always comes from a scarcity and all that kind of thing. So I've done work on that as well this year, on trying to be thinking more abundantly. And it makes such a difference. I think the more you're open to trying things and seeing what works for you, then, the more impact it has on you.
Would it be fair to say that you were going through a period of exploration and working out what could it look like? What would it look like? Were you actively doing that, or did you not realize you were doing it until you looked back retrospectively?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure what came first, whether it was me being proactive or I think because my friend Caroline I was interested in what she was doing. And then I became more aware of, people like you who are doing this incredible thing to help people like me who were stuck. I think I'd never really realized that was a thing before. Once you start seeking it, it's all there. It's like kind of when you train your brain to look at 11:11 every day, and then you're like, oh, I see it every day. And this is the same with a lot of the things that we do with PR. Like, say to people, like, train your brain to look for opportunities for your business. I think once you start being open to looking, it's all there in front of you. You're just choosing what you want to see more.
It's so uncomfortable for people, though. I ran a session recently with women who were on maternity leave and thinking through what their career is going to look like when they return to work. They're all in employment. Actually, one of the ladies was looking at what things might look like after maternity leave if she created something for herself. And it's a really uncomfortable answer to give people, but there does need to be a period of exploration and gathering, and then assimilating and distilling and letting stuff go and picking other bits up. There's just this kind of gathering period when you just need to be open to absorb and to see what comes up and what you're drawn to, and watch the webinars and read the books and all of that stuff. I wonder to what extent all of the stuff that you've been doing in the background, because you had been open to it, it allowed that moment to take place with the beauty pie box. Like, had you just received presumably you'd received the beauty pie box the month before and the month before that, and
it was the first one.
Oh, it was the first one.
Yeah. It was my treat, my lockdown treat for myself. And I remember I had it on my knee, and I was like, oh, I think I had been looking at ways to start my own business. I think I decided, actually, I am really good at what I do, and it's okay to admit that, and to be able to say that, because I've got to be good at what I do, because I've got to be able to teach other people how to do it, and I think I actually just had that conversation with myself, that it was okay to blow my own trumpet and really position myself as an expert in what I do, because I do know what I'm talking about. And I think at the beginning, I was really nervous about that. So there was definitely like some pricing things and all that kind of stuff that I think a lot of us who start our own businesses go through, because we get worried. I've proved to myself, actually more than anyone, that I do know what I'm talking about. And that's really satisfying. I think the other point you made was really valid. When I went back to my work after my first maternity leave, I was so cross with myself because I hadn't had this amazing business idea. I thought about a few things. I was really annoyed with myself. But it's, you're so right. I wasn't really open. I just wanted that idea. I wasn't really open to actually doing any of the work. I had a new baby, for God's sake. I was exhausted. That's enough in itself. You do see these people who have these great ideas on maternity leave and turn it into a business, and it's boom. But the majority of us, we're just trying to survive through those first kind of 9 months it was before I went back to work. And I don't think I was in the right headspace to even entertain that idea. And I saw something the other day, about it's never too late to do what you want to do. And I think that's really valid as well. Like, I'm so pleased that I've had the experiences that I've had have got me to this point now to be able to look back at both of those experiences, editing the publication, working in the various agencies I've worked in, that have brought me to here. And I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing, I don't think, without all of that experience.
People so often want, and I get this a lot with clients, they want to know what it's going to be. What's the business idea? What's the brand going to be? What's the logo? When do I start the website? Or if it's in employment, what should I do next? Or what job should I be going for? Or should I stay in my current organization and go for a promotion? And we get really obsessed and hung up about that, which can cause a lot of paralysis because we don't know. It's really high stakes. It's really confusing. We want that certainty, but it is that moment when we let go of that certainty and just start to explore what we would like, what we enjoy doing, being open to the webinars, the books, and having that sort of mindset of openness, exploration, and discovery. And that creates really fertile ground for, I'm going to say it again, getting the beauty pie box and opening it up and having that moment of inspiration. It doesn't happen without making sure that the ground is fertile for those moments of inspiration.
If I got that beauty pie box 3 years before, it wouldn't have triggered anything because I wasn't in the right headspace to do it. I wasn't actively looking for, how do I want to make this work? I think also one of the things that I really had to accept, because I tried to think of loads of ideas for product businesses. This is what I saw. I saw people went on maternity leave, came out with an idea for like a nursery brand or a product that, and that's what I was desperately trying to find that idea. What I had to really accept as part of my whole mindset work was actually what I really enjoy and I'm really good at is the PR stuff. And I didn't really want to create a product. That wasn't where my skill sets lie. And it was accepting that actually where my skills were and how I could make that work for what I wanted to do, rather than totally rewriting everything and starting from scratch, because lots of people do that, but that wasn't what was going to work for me in terms of how I wanted to, the type of business I wanted to run and what I want to do. I love championing other people. It's always been my thing. I remember, I think it was Caroline, or maybe it was on a webinar or something that I'd listened to, and they said, if you could literally get paid to do anything, what would that be? And for me, it's connecting people. I literally love, my favorite thing in the whole world is to go, you say, oh, I'm thinking of launching this, and I'll be like, oh, well, have you met this person who's got this business? Because you guys could do something really interesting together. Like, that is my favorite thing in the whole world. And that's what I love about the PR set, because we're in a built a community of small businesses, and they're working together, or I can help introduce them to people that I know in certain places. I get it from my mum. She loved to say that she kind of, always liked to do that as well. But
you're chief connecting, chief connector.
Yeah, exactly. Chief connector. I couldn't figure out how to make a business exactly out of that just by introducing people, but it's a big part of what I do within the PR set, because as I say, like, PR is not just about media stuff. It's about, different ways to get in front of your target audience. So if I had one word of advice for someone, really think about what you love doing. And for some people, it's not the right route. You might love art, and actually creating a business out of art might mean that you don't love doing the creating side of thing anymore. So it's not always the right thing to do. But for me, realizing what brought me joy from my work, I think, was the key thing.
Yeah. What are the kind of practical skills that you have that you can offer that you enjoy using, and what are some of the natural talents that you have? So your skills are in PR and presumably as an editor as well. They're a skill set developed from experience and training, and then the natural gifts and talents, being a natural connector, and the thing that gives you joy, helping people and championing them. So all of those things are conspiring to create this perfect environment that you've built with your business and with the PR set. I
Yeah.
had a
And
really,
that's what, and
sorry, go.
you've done the same thing, haven't you? You've done the same thing with your business. Like you
Yeah,
found the stuff that you love doing.
definitely. So I had a similar experience with you in terms of thinking of a business idea, and I came up with two at the same time. And the one that I wanted was the one that I ran with, which is Rewrite. But the one that I thought I should want was the one that I had to let go of. And so I came up with this idea because I was working full time. I did a lot of travel. I had a little boy in nursery, and I was always on the go. And, running to nursery, dumping him at nursery, racing to the train, commuting into the city, repeat. But I really wanted to be a hands-on mum as well, and be a part of his development. And it's really tough being a working parent or a working carer. And I had this one day where this is embarrassing. I basically dropped him at nursery, and it was this sort of, everything was in slow motion. Like I saw somebody had some traditional dress on, and I was like, oh, that's a nice dress. And then I noticed someone else opened the door and they had and I was like, hang on a minute, is this? And it was in real slow motion. I was realizing that there was something going on and I didn't get the memo. And I said, what's going on today? Oh, it's World Dress Day. Or something, I can't remember the name of it, but something like that, where the children were encouraged to come in their family's traditional dress. And I mean, I'm Australian. I don't know what I would have sent Lucy in, maybe some thongs or flip-flops, a jar of Vegemite. But I had missed this entirely. And I left and burst into tears, rang my husband. He couldn't care less. He was like, big deal. He's like 18 months. He's not going to remember. Who cares? I was just, snotting and floods of tears. I didn't want to be this mom. And so it was at that point where I was like, how can I have more, involvement in his development and feel like I'm doing the best that I can, but also I'm doing this crazy job. So I came up with an idea called Boo Box. And it doesn't matter if someone takes it. It exists anyway, as so many of these ideas do. But basically a delivery box where there would be really interesting and seasonal as well activities that you could do with your child. So I didn't have to do the thinking and following things on Instagram and doing the research. It would just come, and it would be age appropriate, and it would be beautifully sourced and sustainable, yada, yada. And I loved the concept. But did I really want to be doing lots of research into early years development? And was that my area of expertise or even interest once my son was no longer early years? No. I had some resistance to being a coach, because the idea of being a coach, I felt a little bit cringy about that. It felt like a really saturated market. But I had to get over that, because it was a skill that I wanted to develop. And I also really, really love talking to people, obviously, and helping people and seeing people succeed and flourish. I always loved to see others succeed and flourish as well. So I had to move towards the thing that I really deeply wanted, even though at the time it felt like the thing that I shouldn't want as much.
Yeah, I had a really similar idea actually about a subscription model, arts and crafts thing, and I spent all night. I remember I lay back going, oh my god, I've got it, and I got up in the morning and got it. I was like, oh, someone's done it, and then I was like, I can't do it then because they've done it. It's like, if I'd really wanted to explore that idea, I could have done it and run with it, and it just wasn't the right thing for me.
That's a really, really important point. If someone's listening and they have come up with an idea and then they've Googled it and someone else has done it, so what? Like, what is it that you could bring to that that's different? I didn't want this idea enough. I mean, there's a I can't remember what the box is called, maybe toucan box or something like that.
That was the same one.
So we could have been competitors for each other as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But if there's something there already, that's just demonstrating that there's a market for it.
And I think that is something as well that I again had to get over, because the idea of subscription PR is, there are other people doing it, but I'm doing it in a way that teaches what I think is really important about PR, and I'm bringing me to it, and that's what's important for my members are getting my experience, and only I can give that, because no one else has got my experience. So there's different people. I think the other thing is as well is that, you know, you've got to really focus on what is right for you, and not you know, this is something I say to lots of the small businesses that I work with. We're so busy looking at what everyone else is doing that we get really distracted. But if it's really, you know, stay in your own lane without talking too many cliches. It's important to see what other people are doing, but not so much that it paralyzes you and stops you from moving forward, I would say.
And also not focusing so much on what things look like on the outside and what we're thinking about on the inside. So I had a call recently. I've got a little accountability group, and I was sharing with them some stuff, you know, about me and my business. And, you know, they were saying, we thought this. And because, you know, how you're feeling about something versus how it's looking can be worlds apart. And so it's really, really dangerous to think, well, I'm not keeping up, or I'm not doing as well as that person, or there's already something like this in the market. There's no room for me. People like me can't. All of those thoughts that we have, where it's the most frightened and vulnerable part of ourselves, comparing one dimension that is being shared in its most flattering and advantageous of ways. You're not comparing apples and oranges there.
No, totally. Something that I always say is smoke and mirrors. Stolen that off my best friend Katie. But yeah, smoke and mirrors, like, you know, what people are putting out there isn't the full picture. So there's absolutely no point, and it's really easy to say, but there is no point in comparing yourself. A really good example of this is somebody that I really respect. She's got a different business to me, but kind of similar, like educational business, and she is flying. I mean, her business is doing incredibly well. But actually, she just put out some really kind of vulnerable stuff saying, you know, it's actually been a really difficult year. I've made some wrong decisions in my business this year, which has meant that things haven't worked out. Things have kind of failed, maybe not failed, but, you know, she was really open about it. And if she hadn't said that, I would literally have thought, oh my God, she's, you know, making millions, she's doing X, Y, Z, you know, because that's the perception that I've got from her, but I don't know her. Like, you know, I'm making this up again in my head. I'm creating a story for her that isn't necessarily the right things. And I imagine as well, I mean, you'll have much more experience of, and I used to do this as well. That person's moved to that agency and they're doing really well, X, Y, Z. I mean, you don't know what their review was like. You don't know what's going on.
Or how they feel. That does come up a lot in my groups, because I work primarily with professionals, successful professionals. They have fantastic careers, great job titles, you know, all of that. And one of the things that comes through once we start to do the work is this, oh wow, well, you seem so successful, and you're feeling as vulnerable or as unsure or as unclear about what you want as I am. You seem to have it all together. We're all humans and having the same challenges, and not necessarily walking around pinned to our chest with, I'm insecure about this, I made this error last year, you know, I haven't hit my revenue target, I didn't get the promotion. We're not walking around with that, but we're all feeling that.
No. And that's what I love about, you know, I'm part of a few group, like business networking is the wrong word because it makes everyone think ick, but, you know, I think that's how we met in a business group. And actually what is great about those is that people are much more vulnerable, and they talk about it being hard. And, you know, that's what happens in the PR set as well. We have a monthly Q&A, and it's not all just like, look how amazing I'm doing. It is, this isn't working for me. And other people will say, well, it's not working for me either, but I changed doing this. And actually that collaboration, I think if the last 18 months has shown us anything, collaboration and community are so important. And I think we're in a really lucky time to be, you know, making decisions about ourselves that might change things up a bit.
So what was it that you loved about your old career that you took forward? And what was it that you didn't want to take forward?
So I love the energy. The thing I miss the most is the teamwork. I really miss other people and working with other people. And I'm a kind of extroverted thinker, so I love bouncing ideas off people. And there's only so much my husband can talk about PR. But I think I found that So like we were just talking about the groups and the networking, you know, I found different ways to replicate that. Obviously, it's not the same. I don't have a team working with me, but I found other people, and my best friend Katie and I are in the same, do the same thing. So we really kind of talk through things a lot together and bounce things, ideas off each other. And I found other people. I'm just launching a course with Kat Sims, who's an influencer, about how to work with influencers. So I found people that I can work and collaborate with in different ways to replicate that kind of that camaraderie and teamwork thing that I really miss.
Was that a conscious decision? So did you did you say to yourself, I know that I like working with people and in teams, therefore I need my business to include that aspect? Or was it more organic than that?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't really until I kind of was doing it by myself that I realized that I really missed that. But I think naturally what I have created with the membership and stuff, you know, I've got those great relationships with people. Maybe it was more of a conscious decision because I didn't want to just create a course that people bought and I never saw them again and I couldn't necessarily see the impact of what they were doing. That's why that was the conscious decision, creating a membership, because I love the fact that I can help people, the same people, and kind of bring them into my world and see what's going on with them and see the results they're getting and help them through over the stumbling blocks. So I think that probably was a conscious decision, but it wasn't really something that I thought about until I was working by myself going, I miss people.
I just think that's a really important point, because what I'm hearing throughout our conversation and in so many elements of the way that you have approached starting your business, approached moving on from your old industry, but staying in your old industry as well, it's always, I'm not an entrepreneur if it looks like this, but I can create an entrepreneurial model that looks like this and works for me. I don't want to work in an old agency, but I can work in a new agency. I don't want to work in PR as a dark art that's exclusive. I want to make PR accessible. I love teamwork and working with people. I'm going to create that with a community and with the networks that I liaise with and build around me as well. So it's this approach to, it's not quite like this that I want to do it, but I'm going to build it in my own way. That is such an interesting and liberating way of doing things, because the moment that you go, okay, well, if not this, what could it look like? You open up possibilities and you can fulfill the things that you want if you allow yourself to think about them a little differently.
When you come from an industry where things are done a certain way, it can feel like there's no other way to do it. And actually, the pandemic gave me that point to pause. I would definitely not have got to where I've got to and been able to create this without that pause. I you know, that pause really benefited me, obviously in that way, not in all the other ways, but you know, it did allow me to think. And I'm not a person who thinks very in depth. You know, I've got all the business books, but I usually get halfway through them and then think I've figured out what they're trying to tell me. And then I'm very fast paced in the way that I work, and you know, if it's too slow for me, then I'm not a details person. I think all of this has happened, but it hasn't been a very conscious thing that I've done along the way. I've allowed myself to be open to possibilities, and that was the key thing, really.
So if someone was listening to this and they are in employment and feeling that itch, or feeling like it's not working for their lifestyle, or that they're not impacting the people that they want to impact, and they've got no idea what to do next, or they're thinking those things like, people like me can't, or I'm not an entrepreneur, or I don't have the answer, what advice would you give to them, or what would you encourage them to do next?
I think you've got to scratch that itch, haven't you? Like, you've got to explore it, because if you don't, I think I've probably got this from Caroline as well. Like, if you don't do it and wake up in 5 years, 10 years time, how are you going to feel? How are you going to feel if you just carry on in the same way, feeling frustrated with what you're doing? And for some people, that's okay. Like, you know, they can live with that because life's easy and it, you know, whatever. But I think for me, I had to find a way to make it work around the values and the things that were really important to me in my life, and that was a non-negotiable. So I had to explore it, and I had to change my mindset, because if I didn't, there was just no way that I could make that change. I think you've got to dive in and be open to change and to evolving, and that's the thing. I think one of the things I've learned doing this is that everyone is evolving all the time. So the businesses that I work with are not, they're not the same businesses in 2, 3, 4 years time, and I've learned that from seeing my friends do it. Actually, I think that was a really good thing for me. Actually, my friends did it, and that was the thing. I was like, well, if you can do it, why can't I do it? Because we're kind of, we're not the same people, but there's no difference between your background or where we've come from. We're very similar. Like, if you can do it, then I can do it too.
The only thing between someone who's doing it and someone who's not doing it is the doing it. You just got to do it.
Yeah. And that's something that I say when I'm teaching PR. I'll show all the logos of the amazing places that my members are getting in. And that's the kind of the thing that I say to people. The difference between my members getting in Stylist or The Times or whatever publication is the fact that they're doing it. It's not that their business is like super duper a zillion times better than yours. It's literally that they have a small business, but they're going out and doing that PR for themselves. And that's the same with anything, isn't it? It's the same. I did it recently with ads. So I kind of wanted to do ads for my business, and I was like, I can't learn how to do ads. But people like me don't learn how to do ads, I mean, not quite that dramatic, but I found it really complicated. And I thought, no, like, what, none of this stuff that we're doing is rocket science, is it? I can be taught how to do ads. I teach people how to do PR, so I can go out there, and I did it. That's really satisfying, isn't it? Just, at the beginning of something, say I can't do it, and then figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah. If I could do it, or if I did do it, what would that look like? How might I take that forward? Okay, last question from me. And it's about self-promotion. So going right back to the beginning, self-promotion, whether you're in employment or you are working for yourself, really uncomfortable toe curling stuff a lot of the time. What are your guiding principles for people getting comfortable with self-promotion, or doing it even if they're feeling uncomfortable?
Do the work on thinking about who you are, your story. Spend some time getting to know you a little bit better. I think the key thing is knowing who you are. It doesn't work when you try and pretend that you're someone else, or you try and copy the way that someone else has done it. So being really genuine about who you are and why you're doing it is really important. I think understanding why you're doing it as well, like what's your objective, because if it's about establishing yourself as a leading expert in your career, or being known for XYZ, thinking about why you want to do it, because that will help you put a plan in place of how to do it. And I do think having a plan is really important, like not just giving it a go and seeing if it happens, like actually thinking why you want to do it and how you're going to do that, because then it becomes deliberate, and it becomes something that you go out and proactively do, and you set yourself goals. It might be that you want to get on one podcast in the next quarter, or you might want to speak at an event in the next 6 months, or you might want to write an article for a magazine. And by giving yourself those targets, it actually encourages you to go out and do it. So break it down into bite-sized, manageable, easy chunks, and then just do it, because sitting on it and procrastinating isn't going to move you forward. So yeah, I would say just get out there and send an email to someone. Do it now. Do it today.
Do it by the end of the day. Okay, true or false? PR is for everybody.
True.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, and also how other people can share theirs. Yeah. Have you got anything coming up that you want to self-promote?
Yeah. Well, obviously you can come to the PR set. I've launched a new course actually with Kat Sims, like I said, about how to work with influencers, which if you are a small business or have a team will be really useful. But yeah, the PR set is there. I have the DIY membership, but I do one-to-one work as well. So if you just want to start with a plan of how to get going in 2022, then now is the time. I'm really looking at how we can use this energy going into 2022 as a bit of a kind of a reset for people, and we're doing lots of stuff in the PR set on that. But yeah, and also I'm on Instagram, like, ask me questions, because I literally I spend too long answering questions. I probably should be doing other stuff, but if I can help anybody out there to feel more confident in going out and doing it, then yeah, that's what I love doing.
Where do people find you to ask you those questions?
So I am www.theprset.com or Pippa_the.pr.set on Instagram.
Fantastic. And would you be open to DMs from people who are in employment getting comfortable with their self-promotion too?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and there's lots of ways that you can do that as well from a career perspective. So yeah, drop me a message and we can have a chat.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Pippa. And I wish you all the best for 2022.
Oh, you too. I can't believe it. Exciting.
Speak to you soon.
Thanks so much. Bye. Thanks. Bye.
The Rewriters is produced, written and presented by Monique Shaw, original artwork by Kiana Perry, and original music by DJ Cinnamon.